Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this morning for business continuity planning. We are delighted you could join us, and we are just going to begin with a short briefing before we kick off the seminar. To take you briefly through the outline of the webinar, we've had the briefing. You're going to have some welcome remarks and tone setting from our country director, Wangeshi, and then we will have the speaker who will run the live poll as we go through the session. At the end of the session, we'll have an open forum and we will close with the feedback, and we expect to conclude the webinar by 11:30 a.m. this morning. Thank you. So for now, I'm delighted to invite Wangeshi Morioki, the Invest in Africa Country Director, to open the webinar and give us a few remarks of context. Welcome, Wangeshi.
A very good morning to everyone. It's great to see all of you. I see that we've been joined by more than 50 organizations this morning. It's really wonderful to see all of you and to have you respond to our call and to our invitation. I can see that we have a list of very many organizations, and it really gives us pleasure that you could respond in a very short time and on short notice, obviously coming from the long Easter weekend. And we really wish that we were connecting during a better time. This is not the very best of time that we are meeting. I really wish we were connecting at different times, but I guess it's because of the COVID pandemic that we find ourselves together again. And obviously, as we can see, there is nothing we can say that comes close to the magnitude of the impact of what we are facing today. And we are living in very extraordinary times, which is what this webinar is designed for us to do or to be able to achieve. We are trying to enable small and medium enterprises to successfully steer their ventures during these very turbulent times. The purpose of Invest in Africa in organizing this is to really help us to address our concerns, listen to SMEs, and we are working very closely with organizations. So as Invest in Africa, we've actually organized a series of interventions and initiatives that are designed to help us cope with the crisis at this point. One is this webinar, the webinar that we are running today. We are also working very closely with the government and with private sector organizations to engage them to understand how we can all come together and support SMEs. We'll also be running a business online clinic, a business clinic, and you can post your questions. Our experts will be available to respond to you and to speak to you. So we are doing different things as Invest in Africa. And now let me here and what we do in a very short while. As you can see from the screen, we are a private sector partnership initiative that's working to drive economic growth or sustainable growth and job creation by catalyzing small and medium enterprises. SMEs lie at the center of what we do, and we are working with the vision of prospering African economies. So IIA's purpose is to enable SMEs or small medium enterprises to trade with multinationals. So we create linkages between small companies, SMEs, with multinationals and the large corporates by intervening on three things. We enhance the skills of SMEs, we help them to access markets, so we create market linkages to those organizations, and we also support small and medium enterprises in accessing finance. So IIA is able to achieve this mission through a coordinated and a networked approach. So we provide a supportive network, a very supportive, and sustained network for SMEs through an ecosystem that we have been building for the last 3 years. So this is comprised of private sector organizations, big business that we partner with, that buy from SMEs. We work with coaches, we work with mentors, we work with business development experts, associates, banking partners, who provide in sharing resources and providing linkages in order to help our SMEs thrive and grow in prospering African economies. So like this morning, we're working with the SME Support Center, who are our proud partners, who provide capacity to small and medium enterprises and also link them to finance. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that as we progress. So back to why we are here again. As we move through these very, very turbulent times, we are thinking about SMEs. How do we drive focus? How do we enable you to think ahead? How do you plan with these scenarios? With all the news and the bad news and all the bombardment that is happening, we are thinking and exploring solutions on supporting SMEs to thrive. And I think earlier on I had alluded as per the slides, the 4 ways in which we are working with SMEs. This is just one of the webinar series. We'll be running more. We have mentors coming to speak to the SMEs. We have business coaches that will be talking to SME leaders to coach you through how to lead through a crisis. There will be a calendar of events running, and you'll be invited. Later on, you have a moment on the feedback form to provide us more detail on what you'd like us to address. I don't want to give you so much detail about what we are doing, but you can see that those are the 4 ways in which we're supporting SMEs at this point in time. If you're interested, there will be a team dedicated to following up with you in the next 2 days to tell you more about how you can join our network, our biashara.now network, which is what most businesses or most people know us for. So talking about today we are looking at business continuity or COVID within a retailing sort of environment, and how this is impacting businesses. We are being forced to think differently because of the new realities that this situation is presenting. And when we look at the retailing sector, for instance, there are so many changes that are occurring. There are so many questions. Just the other day, I was wondering, are we now ready for e-commerce, for instance? Is that where we should be thinking as businesses? How do we find customers when demand is a slump in demand? How do we navigate this challenge? Business closures and a lot of things that are happening. So I believe that today's webinar on scenario planning is going to give us insights into how we can navigate this journey and this crisis, given that we have a very well experienced person and resource person who's part of the Invest in Africa network to lead us on this. I'll talk to you very briefly about Linda and have her profile projected right there. I don't know whether we can see her profile right there, but Linda is the CEO or the Chief Executive Officer of the SME Support Center, and she is an award winner. She has garnered several awards. We'll be projecting her profile later. I don't know why it's not coming on. She has won several awards. She's dedicated to supporting. She's been creating LinkedIn across here. She has a wide experience in South Africa before, and she previously also worked with Deloitte. She has worked with PwC, and she's within this space. And we are really proud to have someone like Linda take us through this webinar on scenario planning. And without further ado, I'll just welcome Linda to take it up from here. And as Terry mentioned, let us engage. Let us give feedback. We'll be polling, so we'll be looking at the chat box to post our questions and our responses. And feel free to ask questions during that moment when it comes. And as Invest in Africa, we are welcoming you to join our Biashara Now platform and give us feedback that is needed to improve on the next series. So thank you once again, and over to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Wangeshi. I hope you can all hear me. We're very excited to run this with Invest in Africa as SME Support Center. And the strategy really Sometimes people think it's not very necessary, but at this point, really, it is really about what decisions should we make now based on all the scenarios that are facing us, and we need to make the decisions as fast as possible. So strategy becomes very, very handy, and I'm very excited to really run this session. So today I will show you the link between strategy and scenario planning, and really why scenario planning? Why did we have to call it scenario planning and not just strategy and leave it like that? Because scenario planning really is really about developing several futures. So typically, what typically happens in most cases, Terry, you can put the slide. Typically, what happens in most cases is that people try to predict only one single future. So, for example, at this point, you might try to predict what will happen for let's assume the lockdown goes for three weeks. What will happen for 3 weeks? But then there are other decisions you can take, not just for the 3 weeks. You can take for the 6 months. It will affect what decisions you take, and that is why you go for scenario planning. Literally, why do you do scenario planning? Is because you can't predict one single future, and you need alternative futures. So this session will have 3 key steps, and the first step really is we will diagnose the current business pressures. So as the retail and Wangeshi laid a good foundation, what are your current business pressures? So we'll want a deeper diagnostic on that. We will look at the current options that you face. So all the possible options, and see how to develop a strategy, which options you will pick based on which scenario. And then we will finally develop a strategy. So I've made it very simple into 3 key steps. And so that we can all, I think my objective after this session is so that all of you can be able to just reflect 1 hour after the call and put everything in terms of your current options, your current decisions, based on the various scenarios that we will go through. So we will start with the current business pressures. This is going to be very, very engaging and very involving. So because we want a deeper diagnostic into your current business pressures, we're going to run several polls across the call. So you'd have to be very involved. I think Terry alluded to that. And so we can go right into the business pressures. And the first pressure is really the revenue pressure. So when it comes to revenue pressures, you have various things affecting you. Basically, you have decline in sales orders, you have maybe decline in supply, you perhaps have, for some of you, very increased in prices. So basically the revenue pressure is about sales, and sales is a function of price and units sold. So basically you have a drop in number of customers, a drop in purchases per customers, a drop in supply, apologies for that. And it's really, those are the pressures that you're facing currently. How do you navigate the drop in number of customers? For some of you, you've perhaps closed your retail shops. If you are really selling like shoes and other non-food items, which are not very on demand now, you've had a drop in number of customers. Some of you, you may have customers, but you have a drop in purchases per customers. And some of you have a drop in supply from your suppliers. So if you're importing, for example, you're currently not able to import, and that's a pressure, that's a revenue pressure. So you might not meet your sales objectives. So really what we want to do now is to diagnose deeper, how does this pressure look like? And we'll run our first poll. And it's really on the disruption in sales orders. So if you go to your message here, your message box, the team should be able to send you a link. Please open the link. Please fill in terms of your revenue, the disruptions in your sales order. So we will run the poll just to understand deeper what does the disruption in your sales order look like. So far we have 7 responses, 11 responses. For the ones who've just joined, basically we are click on that link and you click on the poll. It's very interesting what we're seeing. So we have 6 people on the call whose orders have decreased by over 75%, which is very, very interesting. So I'll give a chance to someone in the call. If you fall between those ones whose orders have decreased by over 75%, I'll give a chance to one of you to just unmute your speaker and tell us what is the real issue as we dig deeper.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, my name is Charles. I'm Chairman Events. We're in the events industry. And basically, being that we're in the events industry, any gathering we do the temporary shelter provision of temporary shelter we've been highly affected by the COVID because there's nothing where anybody can join. So all our orders from the 12th of March were done. So there's been no orders since then.
Can we say those in entertainment and arts, the ones that can basically, if your business model is about holding and having crowds, you basically can, your sales orders have decreased by over 75%. Really, almost 100%, really, isn't it?
Over 100%.
Yeah, by over 75%, close to 100%. So those are the ones on the extremes, the ones whose businesses are really based on gatherings. Can I hear one more? Is anyone outside of those, of that kind of business, of events, arts, entertainment? Can I hear one more?
Hello.
Hello?
My name is Kefa. I joined. I'm in training. Business. I think we are impacted by not necessarily social distancing, but the whole impact.
So yours is above 75%, is it?
I would say maybe 50%.
Okay. So you have some clients. You're going online now. Are you going online trainings now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, very interesting. So we've singled out those three. We can go back and look at other pressures because we want to dig deeper, because some are really industry specific or sector specific. Some problems are really sector specific. So maybe we can go back to the slides and discuss the next pressure, which is like the cost pressure. At times you have the revenue pressure and you also have the cost pressure. So the costs that you have to be faced with, whether it's rent, whether it is salaries and so forth. So cost pressures, you normally look at them in twofold. So you have the fixed cost concentration. In layman terms, what that basically means is what is your highest cost as a percentage of all the total costs. So if you look at all your total costs, so these are the overheads. You see your fixed costs, because you're more keen on your fixed costs, because you see your cost of sales. If you don't trade, you also don't incur cost of sales. But on your fixed costs, those ones you must pay regardless of whether you trade or not. So first you want to see which is my highest cost, and then you want to see the cost coverage, the expenses as a percentage of revenue, because the moment you do this, you'll be able to make decisions based on the scenarios we will discuss later. So we'll run a second poll, and it will be on those two bases, the fixed cost concentration and the fixed cost coverage. So the first one is current expenses as a percentage of total costs. We made it very broad. So in terms of salaries, where does it fit for you? Is it below 25%, 26% to 50%? And it is, because this is important for you to realize where the intervention should be. So just open the poll. The link is on your chat. So what we are seeing is that rent, utilities, which is the normal bills, for some of you is below 25%. Majority is below 25% on this call. The rent as well. Salaries, majority of you are between 26 to 50%. Transport for some of you is low. So let me look at the discrepancies. We shall tackle this, and we shall tackle the cost concentration and the cost concentration and the value between the cost and sales together, just so that we can get more insight. But what we are seeing here is that for most of you, utilities is not a big deal. So there's no, because you're in retail anyway, there's no manufacturing here and so forth. Transport as well, for most of you, it doesn't seem to be a big deal so much. The biggest deal is salaries is 26 to 50% for most of you, which is very interesting. So what I'd like us to do is, so that we can make commentaries on this, on the cost pressures. David, please run the other poll as well. We shall see both at the same time. The poll on current expenses versus total revenue. So he sent the link. Just fill that one as well, because that should be slightly different from this. So the first one was really about cost concentration. So even as you develop options, you're asking yourself, where are my costs concentrated first as a percentage of total cost? Because that informs the decisions that you begin to take. Now, when we come to expenses versus revenue, it's another story. And why is this important? Why is current expenses versus total revenue important? Because it shows how much your revenue can cover your costs, especially your fixed costs. So for those of you who have low orders, whose sales have declined by over 75%, this is a very strong indication, because it tells you how long can you really be able to cover your fixed costs. What percentage, then you can be able to see then how long. So it's very important for you to do the fixed cost, current expenses as a percentage of revenue, because then you can be able to see if 50% of my costs, my fixed costs, make up my revenue, there's a problem, you know. So let's try that one. Let's see. So we have 9 responses. So what percentage does your cost cover your, what is the percentage of your cost versus your revenue? So the ones that are 51% to 75%, those ones are going to be prompted as we look at the scenarios to make drastic decisions on their costs in the short term. So those ones in the blue, so where you have salaries, over 75% of the salaries is actually your revenues, is actually as a percentage of your fixed costs. I would urge you to go back and look at the composition. I mean, to verify this with your accountant, but if it's truly over 75% of your salaries as a percentage of your revenues, that's a red flag. It means during this COVID period, for those people, there are going to be drastic options. This is what this is just trying to say. So I see for some salaries, looks like it's 26 to 50% is also quite heavy in there. Utilities are very low because you guys are in retail. Anyway, you're not in manufacturing. If it was manufacturing, it would have been a different field. If it's like transport is also below 25% of your revenue. So basically what you're looking at is really, for the first one, what is my highest cost? And for the second one, as a percent of revenue, you're basically trying to say how much, with the loss of sales orders, how much longer can I really go on? And these two, for the ones that had very high decrease in sales orders and large percentages of costs as a percentage of revenue, you must be under a lot of pressure. Those are the guys right now under a lot of pressure, and which is why things like really policy and interventions on credit and funding to SMEs really needs to be customized. And we've been having this conversation with Investing in Africa, because this is important for us to go back and show, because the SME sector is not homogeneous. You can see people are different revenue affected, but the most affected is that category I have talked about. Good. So anyone wants to make a comment? I'll allow 2 people. You can comment on the 2 slides. Okay. So I think because there are no comments, we can move ahead. So basically, we've covered the cost pressures. We can go to the next slide on the supply chain pressures. So you're basically on, for those of you who are trading, like the hair and beauty, you're basically sourcing your materials from somewhere. So one of the pressures you're facing is suppliers are no longer perhaps supplying. You're facing logistics disruptions in transport, with the containment in Nairobi. And what does that mean for your suppliers is that if they can supply, there's obviously increased prices of supplies. So what's this happening is that you have increased prices of your inputs and your cost of sales. So this one directly affects your cost of sales, which is not your fixed cost, your cost of sales, right? And so it's really about shortage in supply, logistics disruptions, and the increase in prices. So we'll run another poll. David has just shared the link. David Ajoy has just shared the link. So click on it. So it's really, how has the COVID pandemic affected your access to critical raw materials? This doesn't affect some businesses, but it affects some. Some who are on some retails are very affected by this. How has it affected? So we have 3 key areas. There's availability, there's pricing, and there's quality. So if it's availability, is it acute shortage, available as normal, oversupply? Pricing, is it cheaper, same pricing, inflated pricing? And why this is important is for you to go back and make some decisions on the supply side. And we're going into that. The next stage is really looking at all our options, right? So why looking at the cost pressures so in detail, it helps you understand. So if it's acute shortage, should I just close shop? But then if you close shop, how then do you address the overheads? Because you must make decisions on the overheads. 10 responses. So what are we seeing here as it moves? So basically what we are seeing is there's an acute shortage when it comes to availability. Is really acute. The pricing is inflated for most of you. That's what we are seeing. We are also seeing primarily it's the same quality. So the quality hasn't really reduced for most of you. You're able to access the same quality, not substandard, but at inflated pricing for most of you, because the blue is higher. And also there's acute shortage. So this, as you look at this, you begin to make what are the strategic options for each of these. If I'm on acute shortage, what does that mean? And I have overheads up to above 50%. What does that mean? What are my strategic options? Yeah. So for someone for Ariti, they say hair and beauty, we have product availability. You can actually put the comments in here. We have product availability mainly because of old stock and low orders. So for you, you can perhaps continue selling and so forth. So some people had accumulated orders, which has worked in your favor. Whether you can sell it in the same pricing, at least it's not been so affected because you don't have to order more on the logistics. Very interesting. There's a lot of inflated pricing, not surprised because you're on retail. For some of you, now it has changed. It's available as normal. There's no acute shortage as well. So it's available as normal. Either could be a stock issue, you have stock, or maybe your product is not affected by disruptions. So very interesting that it's available as normal. Maybe you can comment.
I am able to, I had bought them earlier before the coronavirus went on, so I've got enough stock in the salon. So I'm not buying anymore. But checking through the supermarkets, I find that they are still the same price. It hasn't been put up, except for surgical spirit, which is extremely expensive now.
Very interesting. Thank you. Because of time, we can move to the next one, but it's very interesting what we are seeing. We can move to the next pressure. Cash flow. So for those of you with low orders, up to 75%, high cost concentration, and increased prices from suppliers, you're basically feeling the cash flow pressure. So cash flow is about 4 things really. Why you're feeling a cash flow pressure is because of 4 things. Either you have increasing debtors, because you have increasing number of customers who want to buy on credit. You have decreasing creditors, suppliers who want to be paid in cash because of limited and availability of supply. So for the ones who have low availability of supply, you're facing this. So people want to be paid in cash, but you're selling in credit. So you will have a cash flow pressure. You have reducing cash because of increased costs and cash payments. Increased costs are from supplier prices and so forth. You have diminishing stock. So already at some point, the stock may diminish. You have debt repayments because of pending loans and so forth. So the question we are really asking there is cash flow pressures up to 2 weeks only, up to 1 month only, between 1 and 3 months only, between 3 and 6, and then of 6 months. Let me see how that looks. Okay. Up to 1 month only, 3 people, between 1 and 3 months. So majority is less than 3 months. So it's 1 to 2 months, in 2 months, and we're on month 2 now. Okay, we're already on the month 2 since because it's about 3 weeks since we had the curfews and all. So we are looking at for retail people, we're looking at about 3 months. Very interesting. Maximum 3 months. So we can proceed. This was really to give you, because of time we can proceed. It was really to give you an indication of a diagnostic on the cost pressures that we face. You can go back and reflect on it, because the most important part of what I want us to cover now is what are the options that we have. So now, what are our current options? We've looked at 4 areas, 4 types of pressures. So those are the pressures we have looked at. So what are our options? So if in the business pressures, you'll go back and recheck. If it's a drop in number of customers, you can put your values in there. Everything we have gone through, and what are your possible options really is to things like engage top clients to assess short-term needs, explore e-commerce sales avenues for the ones who the customers cannot go to the shops. People fear going to town. It means your e-commerce must be now ramped up. Explore other immediate term revenues. We had put there sanitizers and masks, but I think that one is already now, Kenyans have already flooded that one already. So explore other immediate term revenue options. Use technology for online service delivery. The one in training, you can do that. Brand building and digital marketing, it's amazing. Right now, people are on their phones and so forth, so you can do more sales in there. For the ones that you've always done it on the shop, interesting ways to sell online. I see meat in Uganda now is even being sold online for people who can't go to the shops, or some shops. Cost pressure, some of you, then these are the options. It doesn't mean what you shall take. I'll show you how you will do. You'll analyze what you do next. These are all possible options. So usually you write down what are all the possible options against each pressure. So cost pressures, you have many options. You have staff layouts, you have restructured staff contracts, reduce the pay within the confinements of the law. You have reduced leave liability. Some people are sending their teams on leave so that they can reduce the leave liability. You have rental in negotiations. The supply chain pressure, you have renegotiate credit terms and payment plans if that is possible. It may not. explore e-commerce, supply chain revenues, scale down production operations. This is very important for the ones that basically you're experiencing very large decline in sales orders. Your fixed costs are also very high as a percentage of revenue. So those are the people who can start thinking about scaling down operations and so forth. Flow pressure is really about cash. So if you have debtors, your energy, if you have debtors in the book, focus your energy on chasing cash collections where possible. If you find a way to access short-term credit, I see the banks are allowing us to restructure our credit terms and so forth. So contact the banks to restructure, access short-term credit from short-term credit providers, as long as it's within your cost confines, right? So this is where now the meets the road. What you do, how does the strategy come in, right? So basically, how you develop the whole idea of this session is to see which options place where. So the first thing is to agree which are the scenarios, right? So we have the best case, the medium case, and the worst case. The best case is where we are right now, right? So we are on a 30-day curfew. The president announced a 30-day curfew, which is between 27th March to 26th of April. So what does that mean? Containment in 4 counties, remain as is. So far, that's our best case, to remain as is, which is containment in 4 counties. Businesses continue to close before 7. Some of you choose to open shop. Some choose to open, some choose to close shop, some retail shop, right? Our best case, it's already been declared. Our medium case is, as we move towards the worst, is 2 to 3 months of the same scenario, and you find many shops and suppliers choose to close shop. So for some of you here, your stock has run out already. You can define the scenarios further based on your situation. This was just a slide. The stock has run out already for some of you who have stock. The stock has run out already, so this is a case you have. Worst case, beyond 3 months, containment in all counties, business do not open, all shops choose to close, and etc. So once you look at, you can define each case further, and then the next slide, then you develop the strategy, right? So what you do is you take each case, and under each case you put all the options that we have seen in the previous slide. So for example, there are some decisions you will take in the best case that you will not take in the medium case. So for example, some of you, when we get to medium case, you may consider staff layoffs. Some of you, I'm just thinking, because it's all options. So at the best case, what are your options? For some of you who use that example where you will not have an event up until 26 April. So the ones who are in events, the ones who are affected by social distancing. In the best case, and maybe your cash flows can last less than, I saw most of it's less than 3 months. In the best case, you might decide to keep the cost as is. In the middle case, some of you may take harsher measures. In the worst case, you may take even further harsher measures. So all the options, you have to fit them depending on your business where they really fit for you. And that's really the strategy based on scenarios. If you wish, your scenarios can even go deeper and define the scenarios further, really. That's really developing strategy based on scenarios. But the most important part where I spend a lot of time is really to look at your cost pressures in detail. That is the most important. Once you look at your cost pressures in detail, able to look at all the options and place them against each scenarios. I hope it makes sense. So maybe I'll just speak the next slide. So thank you very much. Thank you for participating. Before I bring Wangeshi on board. So we really, so at SSC, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about SSC. We support we have businesses in 6 main areas. We basically provide the fund advisory services, funding fairs, and business advisory, investment advisory, you can go to our website and check further in detail. But I think the most important part is how do you access the services within SSC, which was the next slide. Basically, we have a membership. It's not a membership, but you have to register to access our services. Going forward, we have bonus services based on COVID and in perpetuity. We have bonus services. So step one, register through our website. You register link. It will allow you some free services, and some of the free services we provide are like we'll share funding opportunities and so forth. So once you register, we'll send you all our pricing and service packages. You can see that going forward, and then you decide on the specific pricing package, and then you engage us for more services. In a nutshell, that's it. But we have very flexible, accessible services to really support people, especially during this time. Thank you very much. Over to you, Wangeshi.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda, for that elaborate presentation. And our dear participants, should any of you be interested in contacting Linda, we are projecting her contacts right there. You can see what her email is, linda@smesupportcenter.com. Mobile number is right there. Connect with her on LinkedIn, connect with her on Twitter. As I mentioned earlier on, she's very, very resourceful, and we are cognizant that we can't take too much time. You may have questions, you may have details. This was just a snippet or a window taking us through how we can go about creating scenarios. So I'll now leave this opportunity, or give this opportunity, to a few of us who have questions around the presentation. I know Linda has taken us through quite a number of things. We spend a lot of time running a diagnostic on the cost pressures that we have, and thank you very much for participating on the polling. Now, after that, Linda has taken us through some of the strategic options, presenting 3 key scenarios, and has left it open to us to look at, to review the actions that we may want to undertake in implementing the options. So I would want to maybe give 1 or 2 people a chance to ask questions or respond to the presentation. If there's anything that stands out for you, you can kindly put it out on the chat. If you want to speak, you can just let us know through the chat. We are monitoring the chat, and we'll provide you the opportunity. And kindly, as the questions come through, we'll request you to please mute your microphones to have Linda respond to 1 or 2 questions. Any questions or comments? Okay, so I can see 1 question by Philip. In the event of a total lockdown, which industries can we divest in? Perhaps I will leave that to Linda to answer. In the event of a total lockdown, which industries can we divest in?
Thanks, Wangeshi. It's a really tricky question, but I've seen what I've seen about Kenyans is they've taken the current opportunities, right? And unfortunately, I feel it's already starting to be flooded. So I recently met people who are in salon business. They're now all selling masks and sanitizers, right? You find people who used to sell clothes, retail clothes, and have shops in the malls. They're all doing masks, developing masks, and then trying to make a kill on that as the demand becomes very high. But I think for me, I feel you needed to have been an early bird to go to some of those quick wins, and I feel many early birds have already gone in. So the question for me is really, how do you then, based on your business, 1, can you sell, because you're in retail, can you sell via e-commerce? And how do you do that, right? Can you partner with Sandy at this point to distribute for you, rather than wait for people to come? Because you're already So it's really about how do you continue tapping the demand? Should you offer sales discounts? Should you? So it's I would rather look internally, because we know the industries and the opportunities out there. And I think the quick winners have already started making a queue. But for the rest of us who didn't diversify early, it is then how do I maximize my current situation based on what I have? For me, I would look at it like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. And then there's another question by Anthony Mbugua from the petroleum industry. He says that he's in petroleum industry, which is low margin and high turnover with no much effect on supply chain. I think strategy is really dependent on more scenarios. Is that right? It's a question and a comment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically the methodology is the same. So you will just list out the revenue pressure, the cost pressures, maybe under supply chain, there wouldn't be much effect. But then for when you're developing the scenarios, you can customize it. The whole idea is which options for which scenarios. Scenarios are basically standard, right? In this case, our scenarios are how do the next few months look like? So the worst case, as I said, the scenario is the same case, containment. So the scenarios are whatever. What varies a lot is the options under each scenario, but you can go further and define the scenario based on your industry. Let's assume the scenario is containment. In your industry, it means what you're defining further is that you're saying in your industry, the prices will continue to shrink. I don't know, under the best case, whether they'll continue to shrink by how much. And based on that, you then develop the options. So yes, you can define the scenarios further. The standard in terms of the period and what is happening is the same, but you can customize it to your business and then put the options under each. Okay. So hair and beauty is considered an informal sector, considering orders are not coming so fast, so that we can do e-commerce. What do you propose as a way forward? So hair and beauty, I'm not sure you're selling. Maybe you can type further for me what you're selling. Are you selling like oils or the actual hair to the salons and etc.? So for your case, if you had a shop, in your case, you right now, because it's low, you have two alternative options: either alternative sources of revenue or cost containment, right? So if we look at costs, you can push on sales and all that online as much as you can and get whatever amount of stock you have sell, but also focus on cost containment, right? So if you are operating in a space and you had a lady, renegotiate the terms of engagement for that lady as well, because the alternatives for you, people in hair and beauty, a lot of them I've seen they've gone into masks, distributed masks, like I said, I've seen that a lot. Some of our clients have already gone into that. So, but then for you, it is really then, if you feel the quick wins where there's huge demand now is highly saturated, how do I focus on cost containment and how do I maximize where I am? That's for me, that's where I would focus on. Yeah, so someone is saying, Priscilla is saying, I'm planning to distribute fresh food stuff online, but I do not have a system or a hub. Very good question. You don't have to create a system and an app from scratch, Priscilla. That's a good opportunity for you. Basically, you can link up with existing apps, right? Don't go to create. So you can work with, it's just that some of them I don't know offhand, but there are so many aggregators of food who sell online currently. I need to find the links for you. But basically, you don't have to create your own app at this point. You can leverage on an e-commerce. It's like the OLX equivalent of foods. I need to find which one would be the most appropriate and plug you into that one. So you don't have to do it, create your own thing.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe if I could just give some final comments is to see that I think for the retail now, anyone in retail where viable, you should be considering how you can extend to e-commerce. or how you could partner with distribution logistics companies, or how you can work more with aggregators. And if you're interested, we are still willing to run another webinar that will bring the different experts together on a panel to try and answer your questions. I know in particular that we will be rolling out one series with Sandy, because they are willing to step in and support SMEs who are in retail on ensuring that their goods do get onto the market. As I was starting, I could have mentioned that when this curfew or the lockdown was announced, Naivas in particular had an inflow of 3,000 orders in one day. They were not sure about how to go about it. They had never seen such overwhelming orders, and the average order was 7,000 shillings per person. So in one day, they made 21 sales worth 21 million online. And therefore, what I think is that in Kenya, the future at the moment for retail could be an alternative channel through online distribution, riding on e. We have the platforms, and there are many ways and means in which we can do this. Perhaps we'll be looking at another webinar where we can look at e-commerce for those in retail. Again, if you're interested in that, please give us this on the feedback form. So like we mentioned, we work with the SME Support Center to link SMEs to alternative funding opportunities. And as Linda has mentioned, part of what they do is to link SMEs to other forms of finance that are not necessarily from the commercial banking. So we'll encourage you to talk to Linda to find out how perhaps you could connect to that as a service and to their other consulting products that they have developed for the SMEs. So to just wrap up again, and to thank you. Today, I think we have learned on things. One, Linda has a diagnostic to understand where our cost pressures are. And I'll encourage us to just go and reflect more on what our cost pressures are, what are our possible options, and undertake the choices that we need to make for each scenario. Now we know that there are three possible scenarios. Given this crisis, we don't know how long it will last, but we do know that it will come to an end at a certain point, and let us take action. So one more time, we thank you very much for participating, and we wish you a great day. Asanteni sana, all the best, and God bless you.